The story opens by introducing a high school senior that everyone is absolutely terrified of. But before we get to her, we see a student dumping the nurse's office cleaning duty onto a guy named Kurose, claiming Hess leaving it in his capable hands. Kurose stands there with a mop, while his classmates call him reliable and an honorary health committee member. He laughs along, but it's pretty obvious Hess just being pushed around. This is Kurose, a first-year student. He knows Hess timid and internally has wishing that one day he'll actually have the guts to tell people off for taking advantage of him. Suddenly a voice comes from behind the curtain in the nurse's office. A girl sitting there tells the group that they've been making a lot of noise for a while now. She glares at them with zero hesitation, threatening to kill them if they don't get out right now. The threat works instantly. The other students are terrified, apologizing frantically as they sprint out of the room. This intimidating force of nature is revealed to be the rumored Haimiya-Senpai. And yeah, she seems just as scary as everyone says. Kurose notes that since Haimeia is often hanging out in the nurse's office and has the health committee member usually stuck there, he actually gets to talk to her sometimes. But then the vibe shifts completely. Haimeia gives Kurose a friendly little wave and asks if he got stuck with cleaning duty again. Kurose is totally flustered by the kindness. He thinks to himself that for some reason she's actually nice to him, managing to stammer out a yes. Haimeia stares right at him and asks what's wrong while he continues to look completely overwhelmed by the situation. Suddenly, Kurose drops to his knees, shouting that he can't take it anymore. Haimeia looks down, asking if Hess okay. She leans in close, maybe a little too close, to check on him, asking again if Hess alright. Kurose jumps, surprised by the proximity. She asks if he's feeling sick, but we get a peek at her inner thoughts. She's actually thinking that this dynamic feels really good. The narration circles back to the idea of the senior everyone fears, implying there is definitely another side to her that brings the first chapter to a close. The next morning, Kurose is heading to school, still processing what happened yesterday. He remembers Haimeia offering to help him clean up the nurse's office, and starts thinking, hey, maybe she's not actually a terrifying monster after all. But his thoughts are interrupted by a wall of students blocking the sidewalk ahead. Just as he is thinking, there in the way, a foot steps into the frame right behind him. It's Haimiya-Senpai, and she is not happy about the traffic jam. She hits the group with a death glare and tells them to move it and quit taking up the whole path. The students apologize profusely and scatter like roaches. Witnessing this sheer aura of intimidation, Kurose immediately retracts his previous statement. Yeah, never mind. She is definitely super scary. But then the switch flips. She turns to him with a beaming, friendly smile, calling out Kurose-kun, and asking if he wants to walk to school together. The mood swing leaves him completely whipped. As they walk, Kurose is internally screaming. He realizes everyone is staring at them, mostly because Haimeia stands out so much. And it feels weird, since their relationship has basically been limited to the four walls of the nurse's office. The pressure gets to be too much. Kurose finally blurts it out, asking Haimiya-Senpai point-blank why she's being so nice to him. He's convinced there has to be some kind of misunderstanding here. Haimeia stops in her tracks and looks back with a grin. Instead of giving him a straight answer, she flips the question. Why do you think I am being nice? Kurose starts stammering, and for a split second the thought crosses his mind. Does she like him? Haimeia sees the gears turning in his head and has to cover her mouth to stop herself from laughing. She shuts that down with a cheerful smile, explaining that she's nice to him simply because he's always working hard cleaning the nurse's office. She turns and starts walking again, telling him to hurry up before the bell rings. Kurose is left standing there, totally confused, feeling like he didn't exactly win that exchange, but he didn't lose it either. After a second, he decides to take the win. He is genuinely glad he put so much effort into his health committee duties, which, by the way, he's apparently been handling all by himself since he enrolled. Chapter 3 kicks off with a quick recap. We've got a terrifying senpai who is inexplicably kind to our protagonist. We cut to Haimeia crouched down, excitedly pointing out a sleeping black cat to Kurose. Suddenly, a group of guys runs past, and one of them shoulders Kurose hard enough to knock him to the ground. Haimeia immediately checks if he's okay, while the guy who bumped him looks back, muttering that something is cute. The guy tosses out a half-hearted apology, saying they're in a hurry, and just keeps running with his friends. Haimeia isn't letting that slide. She grabs the guy by the collar and demands a proper apology. The group instantly realizes who they're dealing with and goes into full panic mode, bowing frantically before sprinting away. Kurose watches this unfold and confirms that yes, his senpai is absolutely terrifying when she wants to be. With the threat neutralized, Haimeia pivots back to Kurose, her voice softening, as she asks if he's hurt anywhere. Kurose just laughs it off awkwardly, apologizing for causing a scene and making her worry, but has not totally unscathed. He looks down to see his palms are scraped and bleeding from the pavement. Haimeia notices the blood and points toward a nearby park so he can wash up. While Kurose rinses the grit off his hands at the fountain, Haimeia tells him to take a seat on the bench. She digs into her bag and announces that she actually came prepared. She sits next to him and starts applying a bandage to the scrape. Kurose is trying to play it cool, but Hez internally freaking out about the proximity and how soft her hands are. She pats the bandage down, satisfied with her handiwork, but lingers for a second, still holding onto his hand. She looks up smiling and asks if it still hurts. Kurose barely hears the question because Hez too busy processing how close her face is to his. He manages to look down at his hand and finally notices the bandage itself. It's covered in a pattern of tiny cartoon cats. Unfortunately, the detour costs them. By the time they reach the school gates, a teacher is waiting for them, tapping his watch. They're 15 minutes late. Kurose tries to explain the situation, but the teacher cuts him off immediately. No excuses allowed. They just have to stand there and take the lecture. The teacher accuses them of slacking off and acting like a couple when they should be focusing on their studies. He tells them to stop flirting and get to class. Haimeia hits him with a bright, innocent smile and apologizes, saying she couldn't quite hear him because the glare was too bright. The teacher turns red as he realizes she just made a crack about his bald head. That earns them immediate after-school cleaning duty. Kurose tries to take the fall for her, but it's too late. Hez dragged down with the ship. He can't help but admire that Haimeia isn't even slightly intimidated. Afterward, Kurose tells her not to worry about the detention, trying to cheer her up. Haimeia turns away slightly, pausing for a beat. Then she turns back with a genuine smile. She tells him that walking to school with him was fun, so getting detention was totally worth the price of admission. That comment leaves Kurose completely stunned and blushing. He can only think to himself that, as expected, Haimiya-Senpai is in a league of her own. His brain tries to reconcile the two sides of her he's seen. She's terrifying, but she's also cute. It's a combination that he's having a very hard time processing. In a little bonus scene, Haimeia runs into that same bald teacher later in the day. She casually comments on how bright it is outside, prompting the teacher to aggressively ask exactly whose head she's referring to. Chapter 4 kicks off with the punishment after-school cleaning duty at the pool. Kurose starts out feeling guilty that she got dragged into this, but that guilt evaporates the second he sees Haimeia in her gym uniform. His attitude does a complete 180. Suddenly, getting detention is the best thing that's ever happened to him. He pumps his fist in victory, but Haimeia catches him slacking and tells him to hurry up and start scrubbing. The reality of the situation crashes back down on him. He remembers that she's only scrubbing floors because she stopped to help him earlier. He chides himself for being happy about this, and starts spiraling, worried that she's actually secretly furious with him. His panic spikes when Haimeia calls out his name from across the pool deck. He stiffens up and answers immediately, bracing for the worst. But she isn't mad. She shoots him a smile and admits that doing something like this every once in a while isn't actually that bad. Kurose turns away to hide another blush, quickly agreeing that he's having fun too. The relief washes over him. She's not angry. She really is just a genuinely nice person. With the tension gone, his hopes start to rise. He realizes he wants to get closer to her, but he knows absolutely nothing about her hobbies or what she does for fun. He resolves to start asking questions. Before he can make a move, his daydream is shattered by a loud group of students entering the pool area. They're also on cleaning duty, but they immediately start complaining and decide to goof off instead of working. Kurose is visibly disappointed. He thought this was going to be private time with Haimeia. Now he's stuck watching a rowdy group splash water around while he does all the actual work. He walks over to Haimeia, who is crouched down by the water wearing a face mask. He tries to make conversation, pointing out that it looks like they got some reinforcements. Haimeia doesn't say a word, but she starts radiating an incredibly menacing aura. Kurose instantly realizes that she is not happy about the noise and the interruption. He frantically tries to salvage the mood, suggesting they just ignore the others and focus on their own cleaning. He asks if she's all right, but she just stares ahead and drops a quiet, terrifying nah. Kurose is confused by the vague response and asks her what on earth she means by nah. Then it clicks. He wonders if she's upset because she actually wanted it to be just the two of them, kind of like he did. Haimeia starts to confirm this, saying that it's because but she gets cut off by a massive splash of water right to the face, courtesy of the rowdy guys nearby. Kurose just lets out a quiet ah. The noisy group freezes instantly. The vibe shifts, and they all realize they messed up big time. Haimeia absolutely soaked flashes a terrifying smile. She calmly informs the group that she is going to beat them all to a pulp. The boys scream apologies as they sprint away for their lives. Watching them go, Kurose accepts the truth. Haimiya-Senpai is definitely still scary. The narration notes that the boys cleaned up at light speed before fleeing. Haimeia grumbles that this is the worst, and Kurose agrees internally this was a disaster. Checking her reflection in her phone, Haimeia complains that she's soaked and demands compensation. Kurose thinks that coming from her, that sounds less like a joke and more like a threat. Since she can't stay like that, she unzips her jacket and gathers her hair to tie it up. Jacket off and hair tied back, she grabs a brush and turns to Kurose, saying it's time to get back to work. Kurose immediately loses his composure. He realizes that her white gym shirt is wet, which means it's now completely see-through. He panics, trying his hardest not to look. He knows his dead meat if she catches him staring, so he gets an idea and quickly zips up his own jersey. He walks over and offers it to her, insisting she put it on. She's confused for a second, but after he presses the issue, she looks down at her shirt and gets it. She gives him a genuine smile, thanking him for being considerate and telling him that was actually pretty cool of him. Now wearing his oversized jacket, Haimeia says they should hurry up and finish. Kurose stammers that it was no big deal, just relieved that his jersey wasn't sweaty yet. Haimeia, now sporting Kurose's oversized jacket, asks him to go grab a bucket. Kurose is just happy that the chaos has died down and heads back to being alone with his senpai, so he agrees immediately. She cheers him on to hurry up. Kurose thinks she looks adorable like this, but his mind drifts back to the conversation they were having right before the waterworks started. He wonders what she was actually going to say. He decides to shoot his shot and asks her directly. He wants to know how that sentence was going to end before the splash interrupted them. Haimeia pauses, pulling the collar of the jacket up over her mouth to hide her expression. She looks at him and simply says that it's a secret. Kurose looks devastated and begs for an answer. In response, Haimeia gives him a light smack on the rear with her scrub brush and tells him to quit stalling and finish cleaning. With the interrogation effectively over, the two get back to scrubbing the pool deck. Kurose decides to get a little playful revenge and flick some water back at Haimeia with his brush. He laughs as she looks over, clearly surprised by the counterattack. Once cleaning duty is finally wrapped up, Kurose walks back through the school, buzzing from how much fun the afternoon actually turned out to be. Since the locker rooms are locked up for the day, he decides to duck into the infirmary to change. He slides the door open but freezes instantly. Haimeia is already inside, and she is right in the middle of changing out of her shirt. Kurose's brain completely short-circuits as he stares at the scene in front of him. He starts to stammer out an apology, but suddenly a dark, menacing figure with a creepy smile manifests in the doorway behind Haimeia. Kurose lets out a terrified scream. In the blink of an eye, Haimeia is standing right behind Kurose with a heavy hand on his shoulder. She whispers in a low voice, telling him to forget everything he just saw if he knows what's good for him. Kurose frantically promises to wipe his memory and sprints down the hall for his life. As he runs, he thinks to himself that there is absolutely no way he's ever going to forget that image. Later that night, Kurose is safe at home, staring blankly at his phone. His heart is still pounding as he replays the incident over and over in his head. He gets so worked up that he starts thrashing around at his desk, yelling in frustration. His big and little sisters watch from the doorway looking concerned and wondering if they need to call an ambulance for him. The next day at school, the infirmary incident is still playing on a loop in Kurose's brain. He's stressing out, completely unsure of how he's supposed to look Haimiya-Senpai in the eye after yesterday. As Hez walking down the hall, he spots her heading his way, looking pretty intense with her hood up. He figures he can't just run away, so he tries to steel himself for a simple greeting. As she passes by, he manages to turn and squeeze out a polite "good afternoon." But Haimeia doesn't stop. She doesn't even glance back. She just keeps walking, leaving Kurose standing there in the middle of the hallway. He watches her disappear up the stairs, and the realization hits him hard. He just got completely ignored. This sends him into a spiral right there in the corridor. He's convinced she's absolutely furious about the changing room incident, and this is basically his worst nightmare coming true. His mind flashes back to yesterday when she was smiling at him during pool cleaning. It feels like a gut punch, especially since he thought they were finally starting to get along. He spends the rest of the day zoning out in class, racking his brain to figure out how to fix this. He decides there has to be some kind of misunderstanding here. Then again, he starts doubting if they were ever really friends to begin with. He reminds himself that Hez just a health committee member to her. Even her reason for being nice to him in the first place was pretty vague. Sitting at his desk, he comes to a conclusion. It doesn't matter what she thinks of him. Right now, he owes her a proper apology for making things weird. After school, he heads straight for the infirmary, assuming that's where she'll be. He takes a deep breath outside the door, preparing for the worst. When he slides the door open, she's there on the couch, just like he expected. She's still got that hoodie up and is focused entirely on her phone. Kurose nervously calls out her name. The hood is casting a shadow over her face, so he can't read her expression at all, which isn't helping his anxiety. Suddenly, she flips her hood back, revealing a pair of glasses and a bright smile. She gives him a cheerful hello and asks if he's here for his cleaning shift. Kurose is completely thrown off by the friendly vibe. He's standing there trying to process how she went from giving him the cold shoulder in the hallway to acting like nothing ever happened. She notices he's just standing there like a statue and asks what's wrong. Kurose is so blindsided by her friendly vibe that his brain short-circuits and he just lets out a confused noise. He manages to reboot his speech center and stammers out the big question. Is she mad about yesterday? Haimeia looks genuinely puzzled and asks why on earth she'd be angry. Kurose explains the hallway incident from earlier, telling her that he called out to her and got totally ghosted. That triggers a light bulb moment for Haimeia. She laughs it off, explaining it was a total misunderstanding. She forgot her contacts today and had her earphones in, so she was basically flying blind and deaf. She literally didn't know he was there. She apologizes for the accidental stress test. Kurose just stands there, realizing his entire day-long existential crisis was caused by bad eyesight and music volume. The tension leaves his body all at once, and he blurts out that his just relieved everything is actually okay between them. Haimeia brings up the changing room incident herself, assuring him she knows it was an accident. Then, in true Haimeia fashion, she casually threatens to end him if he doesn't wipe it from his memory. Paradoxically, this death threat makes Kurose feel safe. Things are definitely back to normal. He gets honest, admitting he was terrified she started hating him right when he thought they were finally becoming friends. Haimeia leans in with a teasing grin, asking if the thought of her hating him really bothered him that much. Kurose panics, covers his face, and tries to deny it, but the reaction says it all. We get a quick stat check here. Haimeia's vision is 0.2, so yeah, without context, she's pretty nearsighted. Meanwhile, Kurose is rocking 1.5 vision. The guy sees everything in 4K. Cut to the next chapter. Kurose is walking home, surrounded by groups of students chatting and hanging out while he's flying solo. He overhears some girls talking about messages on Rhine, which prompts him to pull out his phone and check his own chats. It's a depressing sight. He realizes that since starting high school, his social circle is non-existent. His entire chat history is just his family and automated coupon bots. He starts blushing, telling himself to pump the brakes. He might be lonely, but he reminds himself not to read too much into things. He still doesn't actually know how Haimiya-Senpai really feels about him. As getting all worked up just thinking about it, covering his mouth as he walks down the street. Asking a senpai for their contact info feels like a massive hurdle. Then the overthinking kicks in. He starts wondering what Haimeia is actually like over tech. In his head, she's looking at him with total suspicion, demanding to know why he even wants her number. The nightmare scenario continues. He imagines her profile picture is just a black void and that she'd leave him on read constantly or just reply with cold single-word answers. He stops walking, literally sweating from the stress of his own imagination. The worst part is, considering her reputation, it's actually possible she is that dry online. The next morning, the real Haimeia pops up right next to him. She hits him with a cheerful good morning and asks to walk to school together, totally ignoring the student nearby who looks absolutely terrified to see her. While they walk, Kurose is freaking out internally. He can't figure out why she always seems to spawn in the exact moment he starts thinking about her. Shachine good mood, showing him something funny on her phone. Kurose takes this as a sign that she definitely doesn't hate him after the whole changing room disaster, so they must be on good terms. He clenches his fist, trying to hype himself up. He tells himself it's perfectly normal for friends, or at least acquaintances, to swap contact info. But just as he's about to make his move, Haimeia beats him to the punch. She holds out her phone and asks if he wants to exchange ring IDs. Kurose freezes. His silence drags on a second too long, so Haimeia assumes he's hesitating. She asks if he'd rather not sending Kurose into immediate damage control mode. She explains that after he ran off from the pool cleaning duty, she realized she had no way to reach him. Kurose realizes she's actually being practical about this and asks if she's really sure. Haimeia smiles and says of course they're friends, aren't they? That word hits Kurose like a truck in a good way, and he quickly agrees. They tap their phones to sync up. Haimeia laughs a little and thanks him for the ad. Kurose is still processing the fact that he actually has Haimiya's number. Meanwhile, she's checking out his profile and laughing because he doesn't even have a profile picture set up. Then he looks at her profile. Her display name is just Mio, and her icon is this hand-drawn bunny with piercings. It's a perfect mix of cute and edgy, and Kurose is totally captivated. Kurose is still staring at the screen face, heating up as the name registers. It's Mio. He accidentally says it out loud, which definitely catches her off guard. He keeps digging, admitting that Hez never actually heard her first name before. He lets out a happy, slightly awkward laugh and tells her that knowing it makes him really happy for some reason. That level of honesty is apparently too much for Haimeia. She turns away, face bright red, resting her chin on her hand as she tries to handle the sudden direct attack. To reset the mood, she delivers a solid smack to his back, telling him it's no big deal, and they need to get moving. Kurose yelps, wondering what he did to deserve the physical violence. Later that night, Kurose is back in his room, doing what any normal person would do, staring blankly at his phone. He's got Haimiya's profile open again, just gazing at that pierced bunny icon. He lets out a creepy little giggle at the screen. His sisters peek in from the doorway, whispering that their brother is being gross again, and debating if they need to drive him to a hospital. The next day at school, Kurose is walking down the hall when he picks up on some chatter. He realizes pretty quickly that the students nearby are talking about Haimeia. One of them casually drops a bombshell. A friend apparently saw Haimeia smoking. Kurose stops dead in his tracks. The guys laugh it off, agreeing that while it's bad, it fits her scary reputation perfect. Kurose's imagination immediately conjures up a mental image of Haimeia looking cool with a cigarette. He heads to the infirmary feeling uneasy. He tries to convince himself that even though she's terrifying, she doesn't seem like the delinquent type, but he needs to check just in case. Inside, he asks the nurse Aya-sensei if she's seen Haimeia. She tells him Mio-chan is out in the courtyard, so Kurose thanks her and goes on the hunt. Walking out, he keeps telling himself it's just a dumb rumor. There's no way she's actually out here smoking on school grounds. He steps into the courtyard and spots her immediately. And then he freezes because from this distance it definitely looks like she has a cigarette in her mouth. A closer look shows her sitting alone holding a small box with a white stick hanging from her lip. Kurose goes into panic mode. His brain confirms the worst, she's actually smoking, and he even notices she's biting down on the filter. Kurose is in the middle of a full-blown internal panic when Haimeia spots him. She lets out a surprised noise, and before he can bolt or formulate a sentence, she calls out his name. She turns fully toward him, that suspicious white stick still dangling from her lips. She holds out the box, which looks suspiciously like a pack of smokes, and casually asks if he wants one. Kurose just freezes his brain, unable to process the felony he thinks he's witnessing. But of course, it's a massive misunderstanding. The cigarettes are actually just sticks of ramune candy. Haimeia admits they look similar, but she's just addicted to the crunch. Kurose feels his soul return to his body, though he realizes this is exactly why the rumor started in the first place. Kurose confesses that he actually came out here because he heard people saying she was a smoker. Haimeia glances over at the fish pond, admitting that yeah, sitting alone in a secluded area with a white stick in her mouth probably sends the wrong message. She shrugs it off, explaining that people make up stuff about her all the time, true or not. She's reached a point where she just lets them talk and doesn't bother correcting anyone. Kurose, however, is just glad the rumor was fake. He admits he was genuinely worried about her health. Hearing him fret over her well-being, Haimeia listens quietly, a small, genuine smile creeping onto her face. That sweet moment lasts about 2 seconds before the teasing starts. She holds the candy like a cigarette, flashes a mischievous grin, and asks a hypothetical if she had been smoking. What was he planning to do about it? Kurose starts stammering, begging her to confirm she's not actually a smoker because his heart can't take the stress. Haimeia just laughs at his panic, waving the candy stick around and telling him to relax. It was just a joke. We cut to the pond where some massive koi fish are breaching the surface, aggressively munching on food pellets floating in the water. Desperate to change the subject from his earlier panic, Kurose asks if she comes back here often to feed the fish. Haimeia deflects, immediately asking if Hez the one with the thing for koi. She pauses, looking thoughtful. She clarifies that she doesn't necessarily like them, but she spends a lot of time wondering what goes through their little fish brains. Then, with a gentle, serene smile, she wonders aloud what they would taste like. The comment is so menacing that it sends a shockwave through the courtyard, terrifying Kurose and seemingly startling the fish themselves. A heavy silence falls over the pond. Kurose sits there thinking about how incredibly awkward this has become, while the atmosphere is so oppressive that one of the fish looks like it's about to give up on life and go belly up. But Kurose shakes off the awkwardness. He looks at Haimeia, who's gone back to staring quietly at the water. He realizes this isn't the time to judge her dietary curiosity, it's his chance to actually be useful to his senpai. He whips out his phone and frantically types into the search bar. The query: what do koi taste like? As he scrolls through the culinary results, he mutters to himself, determined to get the answer she wanted. Research complete Kurose turns to his senpai with the results. He informs her that according to the internet, if you prep it right to remove the smell, koi is actually a firm, delicious white fish that goes great in miso soup. Haimeia stares at him, completely blanking. She has to awkwardly clarify that she was 100 joking earlier and definitely did not want a serious culinary breakdown of the school pets. She sighs, realizing her specific brand of humor is flying right over his head. Kurose, on the other hand, is still reeling, convinced that her teasing is just operating on a level of sophistication he can't comprehend. A small footnote clarifies the irony here. Despite her earlier comments about eating them, Haimeia is actually the one responsible for feeding the koi behind the infirmary. Cut to Kurose's room, where the poor guy gets a jump scare when his door flies open. It's his eldest sister, 20-year-old Sora, who mocks his reflex fear before asking if he's free this Sunday. She explains that a friend bailed on a movie and she doesn't want the ticket to go to waste. When Kurose suggests she take their other sister Umi instead, Sora points out that 14-year-old Umi actually has a life and is busy with club activities. From the other room, Umi chimes in to confirm she has practice, leaving Kurose with no excuse. He asks what the movie is, and Sora reveals the catch: it's a hardcore horror flick. The poster alone is gruesome enough to make Kurose lose the ability to speak. Sora mentions there is a second ticket, so he should bring someone along. Then she hits him with the ultimate sibling roast. She asks if he's actually managed to make a single friend since high school started. The word friend bounces around Kurose's empty skull as he checks his phone. His contact list is a tragic lineup: mom, sister, a coupon bot, and Mio. The realization hits him like a truck. The idea of inviting Haimeia the Mio in his phone sends him into a spiral. He clutches the device, screaming internally that there is absolutely no way he can pull that off. He tries to rationalize his way out of it, telling himself they aren't close enough for a casual movie hangout. It's too big of a hurdle for a guy with his social skills. But then his brain performs some incredible mental gymnastics. He figures that if he combines a super scary movie with a super scary senpai, the fear will cancel itself out and everything will be fine. He remembers that she did technically call them friends, so he hypes himself up to send a text. But just as his thumb hovers over the screen, a notification pops up, nearly giving him a heart attack. It's a message from Haimeia marked by her pierced bunny icon. She's letting him know that Aya-sensei assigned them committee duty for next week. Kurose reads it instantly and resumes his internal screaming. Haimeia fires off another message before he can spiral too far, asking what's up. Kurose realizes he's been cornered. There's no backing out now. She immediately follows up, pointing out that he read her text the instant she sent it, which she jokingly calls terrifying, and correctly guesses that he was hovering over his phone to send something of his own. Caught red-handed, Kurose stares at the screen, his brain short-circuiting. He tries to type a response, but his thumb just hovers there, trembling. He manages a pathetic before his courage completely stalls out. Cut to Haimeia lounging in her room. Her phone buzzes with a follow-up from Kurose. It's a sudden, high-stakes question. Are you free this coming Sunday? The abrupt invitation catches her off guard. Back on Kurose's end, Hez in full-blown panic mode after hitting send, screaming that he actually did it. He frantically tries to provide context, texting to ask if she can handle horror movies. She replies with a question, why? And he explains it's about the movie, currently in theaters. When she confirms she can watch them, he drops the bomb. He has an extra ticket. Haimeia shoots back a teasing reply, asking if he's trying to check her schedule. Kurose immediately flails, texting back a desperate denial. The suspense doesn't last long. A new message pings on his screen, and Haimia's answer is shockingly direct. She simply says she's free and adds a short, decisive command. Let's go. Kurose stares at the phone, hand over his mouth, completely stunned. She actually said yes. She sends a follow-up, thanking him for the invite and letting him know she'll message him the details later. Kurose lets out a shout of disbelief, mentally thanking his sister for forcing him into this situation. He rationalizes that the upcoming committee duty is the perfect excuse to hang out with her beforehand. The camera pans over to a desk, focusing on a small figurine of a bunny in a spacesuit. Meanwhile, we switch to Haimia's perspective. She's lying on her bed at home, surrounded by an army of bunny plushies, that match the icon she uses on her profile. She stares at her phone screen, looking at the chat history, where Kurose replied to her committee duty text instantly. She lets out a long, flustered sigh, rolling over and wondering aloud if this guy is for real. The scene closes on a shot of two sad-looking bunny plushies sitting side by side. A caption teases that the next time we see this duo, they'll be heading out on a date. Later that night, Kurose's anxiety manifests in a vivid daydream. He visualizes a nightmare scenario where Haimeia is sitting intimately close to some other, much cooler male student, fueling his insecurity. Determined not to let that happen, Kurose approaches his sisters Sora and Umi, who are relaxing on the couch. He awkwardly asks them to help him pick out clothes for Sunday. The request is so out of character that both sisters whip their heads around, staring at him in total shock. Sora immediately clocks his desperate energy and demands to know who the outfit is for. Flustered and cornered, Kurose admits it's for a girl. The revelation hits Sora so hard she lets out a loud scream of disbelief. Connecting the dots, Sora realizes the friend he invited to the movie is a girl, meaning Hez going on an actual date and her ticket isn't going to waste. She starts shouting excitedly while Kurose frantically tries to deny the date label. In the background, Umi cheers for her brother, offering her help, while Sora proudly declares she's going to support him. As Kurose panics, Sora misreads the room entirely. She holds up a condom and tells him to at least be prepared and take one with him. Kurose is absolutely mortified, calling her the worst, while Sora confidently tells him to leave the prep to her, and he begs her to be serious. Sora decides to get serious and asks the million-dollar question, what exactly was he planning to wear for this date? Kurose hesitates, making them promise not to laugh before he reveals his fashion sense. He shows them his intended fit, a plaid shirt layered under a hoodie. The sisters stare at him in silence. Sora eventually breaks the tension, telling him it's honestly admirable that he was brave enough to ask for help before walking out of the house like that. Since Sora is a beauty school student, she takes charge. She decides to cut and style his hair, noting that Hez a high schooler now and needs to look the part. They settle on a much cleaner, simpler outfit, and Kurose thanks her for the save. She grabs his face to give him a little confidence boost, telling him that since he has a cute face just like hers, he needs to go out there with his head held high. Then she drops some actual wisdom. She explains that when a girl gets ready to meet someone, she puts a ton of time and effort into how she looks. So if he thinks she looks cute, he should be embarrassed to say it. He needs to tell her directly. Of course, she immediately undercuts the moment by teasing him, saying she doubts he's actually capable of pulling that off. Kurose can't even argue, he just agrees that she's probably right. Kurose thanks his big sister and heads to bed. As he lays there, he realizes that her advice, while good, has somehow just made him even more nervous for tomorrow. The big day arrived. Kurose is a bundle of nerves, showing up to the meeting spot a full 30 minutes early and immediately worrying that he looks too eager. To make matters worse, Sora is spamming his phone with last-minute dating tips. The pressure of meeting Haimeia outside of school is definitely getting to him. While he waits, he starts spiraling about his clothes. Is the simple look okay? His brain starts conjuring up images of Haimeia showing up in various elaborate styles from preppy to punk, which just spikes his anxiety even higher. Suddenly a voice calls out to him. He turns around to see Haimeia walking up dressed in an off-the-shoulder top and jeans. Kurose is completely stunned. He manages to say her name, but internally he's panicking because she looks absolutely cute. Haimeia points out that Hez way too early, checking the time and noting they still have 20 minutes before they were supposed to meet. Kurose gets flustered, stammering through a weak excuse. He tries to deflect, pointing out that she's pretty early too. Haimeia cheerfully claims she just got the train schedule wrong, though her expression falters for a split second, implying maybe she was just as eager as he was. She recovers with a smile and asks if they should get going. Looking back at him, she tells him she's really looking forward to their day together. Kurose is completely short-circuiting. He tries to remember his sister's advice about complimenting her, but all he manages to squeak out is a weak, he's blushing so hard he might actually combust. As they start walking through the city, Kurose keeps stealing glances at her. It's finally hitting him, he is actually walking next to Haimiya-Senpai. On a weekend, on a date. His brain is running a mile a minute. Seeing her in casual clothes instead of a uniform makes her look incredibly mature. He feels totally out of his depth here, so he decides he needs to step up and keep the conversation flowing so things don't get awkward. He initiates the plan. He turns to her and asks a pretty standard icebreaker. Does she watch movies often? Haimeia actually pauses for a second before answering. Her answer is super vague, just a non-committal so-so. When he tries to pivot and asks what she does on her days off, she just says she stays home. She is effectively shutting down every avenue of conversation he tries to open. And just like that, They hit a wall of silence while riding the escalator. Kurose is standing there sweating completely out of ideas for what to say next. Internally, he's panicking. Despite all his prep work and his sister's advice, the conversation is dead on arrival. He's already convinced his blowing the date. Somehow they survive the silence and make it to the movie theater lobby. It's packed with people, which at least provides some background noise to fill the void. Haimeia turns to him and mentions she's going to the restroom, but as she says it, Kurose notices her aura shifts. She suddenly looks incredibly intense and intimidating, and he has zero clue why. As she walks away, Kurose starts spiraling again. He's clutching his head wondering if he said something wrong or if she's secretly hating this whole experience. Fast forward a bit, and they're seated inside the theater. The movie is playing, but Kurose isn't watching a single frame. He's too busy stressing about Haimeia, who is sitting next to him in total silence. A massive jump scare happens on screen, and Kurose actually flinches. He has to admit the movie is actually pretty terrifying. Right then, he feels a vibration coming from the seat next to him. He looks over, realizing the shaking isn't coming from the speakers. It's coming from the person beside him. He looks at Haimeia and realizes she is trembling uncontrollably. She's making these quiet, terrified little noises, completely losing her usual cool composure. Suddenly, she latches onto Kurose's arm with a death grip. Kurose sits there stunned as the truth finally dawns on him. The terrifying, tough-as-nails Haimiya-Senpai is actually terrible with horror movies. Still trembling, Haimeia whispers Kurose's name and finally admits, defeat this movie is way too much for her to handle. Kurose just stares at her, completely processing the fact that the school's scariest student is tapping out. Thinking fast, Kurose asks if they should just get out of there. Haimeia, who is still clinging to his arm like a lifeline, nods immediately. We get a quick transition of them exiting the theater with Haimeia basically dragging a confused Kurose along in her rush to escape the spooky vibes. Once they're safe in the lobby, Kurose checks if she's alive. She confirms she is barely. Then the apology tour starts. She wants to pay him back for the wasted ticket, and Hez apologizing for inviting her to a horror flick without checking if she could handle it first. But then Kurose asks the million-dollar question. If she knew she couldn't handle horror, why did she agree to come? The directness of the question seems to short-circuit her brain for a second. She turns away hiding a blush and quietly mumbles that she came simply because she wanted to. Then she hits him with a defensive. Is that a problem? That honest answer hits Kurose right in the chest. He turns bright red and blurts out that actually he's really glad she came too. Haimeia realizes she needs to explain her earlier behavior. She admits that the intense aura and bad mood he saw earlier was just her pre-gaming her own fear of the movie. She says it would feel lame to just end the date on a failure, so she asks if he's still down to hang out. Kurose obviously agrees, and as they walk off, he's internally screaming about how unexpected and cute her fear of horror is. They wander into the mall, and Haimeia spots a plushie in an arcade window that catches her eye. They decide to head there, but Kurose needs a quick pit stop at the restroom first. In the safety of the men's room, Kurose splashes some cold water on his face to reset his nervous system. He takes a second to reflect. Despite the movie disaster, he's actually having a great time. Haimeia is totally different here compared to school. Way less terrifying, way more human. He steps out and checks his phone. He's looking at the dating tips list his sister Sora sent him. He reads the one about complimenting your date and realizes that's still a pretty high-level maneuver for him. But when he looks up, the mood shifts instantly. He sees Haimeia cornered by two guys. They're asking for her socials and getting aggressive when she ignores them. It hits Kurose that yeah, Haimeia is objectively beautiful, so this probably happens a lot. But he's not gonna just watch. He steels himself and heads straight over to intervene. The two guys aren't taking the hint. They keep pressing Haimeia, calling her cute and nagging her to swap Instagram handles. Haimeia's patience hits zero. She hits them with a death glare, asking why she'd ever give her info to a stranger and tells them to get lost. The guys look a bit stunned by the harsh rejection. Watching from a distance, Kurose thinks that, yup, she's just as terrifying as usual, but her attitude just makes the guys angry. One of them grabs her arm, demanding to know what her problem is. Haimeia snaps back, telling the trash not to touch her, and Kurose realizes this just went from awkward to dangerous. Kurose freezes up. He knows he needs to step in, but his legs are shaking so bad they refuse to move. He forces himself to focus. He decides he doesn't need to be a superhero right now. He just needs to call out to his senpai. That thought gives him a burst of courage. He lunges forward, pulling Haimeia behind him, and yells at the guys, asking what they think they're doing, touching her. Haimeia looks completely stunned. She definitely wasn't expecting Kurose to jump in like a bodyguard. The two guys are totally unimpressed. They mockingly call Kurose scary and ask if he has her little brother or something. Realizing a fistfight is a terrible idea, Kurose grabs Haimiya's hand. He whispers that on the count of 3 they're making a run for it. He doesn't even wait for a response. He takes off, dragging a surprised Haimeia along with him as they bolt down the hall. As they run, one of the guys yells after them, claiming he didn't want her damn insta anyway. Then he gets nasty, shouting that he only wanted her body from the start and calling her an ugly bitch. Hearing that, Kurose stops dead in his tracks. Haimeia almost trips and asks him what's wrong. Kurose turns back toward the men, looking genuinely angry for the first time. He yells that spewing abuse just because they got rejected is incredibly lame. Silence falls over the hallway. Haimeia and the two creeps are frozen, staring at Kurose like he just grew a second head. Haimeia, completely bewildered, asks him what on earth he's doing. Kurose admits he just couldn't stand there listening to them trash talk her. He tells her that he felt like he had to say something harsh, channeling his inner Haimiya-Senpai. He briefly imagines how she would have handled it, probably screaming at them, with the fury of 1,000 suns daring them to repeat themselves. A little text box notes that this imaginary version is a little too accurate, but in reality, she doesn't rage out. She just gives him a warm, genuine smile and tells him that he said exactly the right thing. The moment passes quickly, though. She snaps back to the situation at hand, reminding him that they should probably get moving before those guys decide to stop being stunned and start being angry. They take off again. Kurose looks like he's running for his life, while Haimeia is actually laughing beside him, clearly enjoying the adrenaline rush a lot more than he is. Once they're sure they aren't being followed, they find a quiet bench in the mall to catch their breath. Kurose is immediately in worrywart mode, asking if she's hurt since those guys grabbed her arm. She waves it off, admitting it was a little scary, but reassuring him that she's totally fine now. She sighs, calling the whole situation a disaster and admitting those guys really ticked her off. Then she points out something interesting for a date where she's the scary senior has been the one doing all the saving today. She looks him right in the eye and gives him a sincere, heartfelt thank you. This level of direct gratitude is too much for Kurose's heart to handle, and he turns bright red. He tries to play it cool, stammering that it's no big deal. He explains that since she's always looking out for him at school, he just wanted to return the favor for once. Haimeia laughs, breaking the tension. She tells him he's actually got some serious guts. Calling 2 aggressive dudes lame to their faces is a pretty wild move. She decides they should let the creeps ruin the day and suggests they head to the arcade. Internally, Kurose is just relieved that he actually managed to step up when it counted. They make it to the arcade entrance. Kurose mentions he hasn't been to one of these in ages, and Haimeia admits she's not exactly a regular either. Once inside, Haimeia immediately locks onto a claw machine. She points excitedly at a plushie she's been wanting, and Kurose realizes it's the same character she uses for her Rhine profile picture. Haimeia introduces the character as a sub-X animal and asks Kurose which one of the bunch he thinks is the cutest. She points out a little mouse-looking one, teasing him that it bears a striking resemblance to him. She declares she's going to snag it for him right now, and Kurose is honestly impressed by her confidence. Unfortunately, confidence doesn't equal skill. She gives it a go, but the claw completely whiffs the prize every single time. After a few more attempts, Kurose realizes she is actually terrible at this. Haimia's expression starts to darken as the losses pile up. She forces a smile and flashes a peace sign, claiming she just needs to go get more chain. Kurose looks at the machine and thinks the setup actually looks pretty winnable. As she walks off, insisting the real battle is just beginning, Kurose decides to slide a coin in and give it a shot himself. He manages to catch the plushie on his very first try. Haimeia returns just in time to witness this miracle and stares at him in disbelief. She demands to know how he did it. He tries to explain his technique of aiming for the body, which just fires up her competitive spirit. She insists that if he can do it, she definitely can. She tries again with renewed vigor, but when she fails, she starts physically banging on the glass, and Kurose has to frantically try to calm her down. Then she turns to him with a terrifyingly polite smile and announces she's gonna call the staff. Kurose thinks she looks genuinely scary right now. She corners an employee, complaining that the game is impossible and accusing the machine of being rigged. Kurose realizes she's entering full intimidating delinquent mode. She marches the terrified staff member back to the machine while Kurose watches in a panic. She looms over the poor guy, insisting that she can't win no matter what she does. Both the employee and Kurose are sweating bullets under her intense pressure. Suddenly, her entire vibe flips. She leans in with a super cute, innocent expression and sweetly asks if he could please just move the plushie to an easier spot. Kurose is stunned. He realizes she just weaponized her cuteness to get exactly what she wanted. The staff member, valuing his life, immediately caves. He opens the machine and places the plushie in a position where it's basically falling into the chute. Haimeia instantly switches off the delinquent mode and hits him with a dazzling angelic smile to say thanks. With the game now rigged in her favor, Haimeia finally snags the prize on her next attempt. She's ecstatic holding it up and gushing over it, while Kurose watches from the sidelines, realizing that this woman absolutely knows how to get what she wants. Then she turns around and extends the plushie toward Kurose. She reminds him that he was the one who said this specific mouse character was cute earlier. Kurose freezes, asking if she's serious. He clarifies that he actually won the first plushie, intending to give it to her. He suggests a trade instead. Haimeia looks genuinely surprised she didn't expect that. He adds that Hez just glad they both walked away with something. Haimeia accepts the trade, holding up the prize Kurose won. A sly grin crosses her face as she points out that now they have matching items. The phrase matching items hits Kurose like a truck. He stands there, face heating up, trying to process the reality that he and Haimiya-Senpai now share a couple's item. Mission accomplished. Haimeia suggests they head out, and Kurose quickly agrees. He's clutching that small plushie like it's gold, barely able to contain his excitement. As they step out of the arcade, Haimeia mentions that the day felt like it flew by. Kurose looks around and realizes she's right. The sun has already set and evening has settled in. Walking beside her, Kurose quietly reflects on everything that went down. Between the movie The Harassers and the arcade, it's been a heavy day. Anxiety starts to creep in. He starts wondering if she actually enjoyed herself, or if it was just a disaster. Before he can spiral too far, Haimeia calls out his name. She turns to him with a genuine smile, thanking him for the invite, and telling him she had a great time. She asks why Hez being so quiet, and Kurose, flustered, quickly stammers out that he had a ton of fun too. He admits that today didn't exactly go how he expected. Haimeia tilts her head, curious about what he means by that. He explains that up until now has always seen her as this cool, unreachable upperclassman. Someone who speaks her mind and even saved a loner like him without hesitation. But spending the day together made him realize she has sides to her that are totally different from that image. He immediately panics, worrying that sounded rude, and asks if she's taking that the right way. She smiles and confirms she is. Kurose finishes his thought with a bit of a heavy realization. Even though they're finally friends, he feels like he still doesn't actually know anything about who she really is. He digs a little deeper, admitting that he honestly has no clue why she's even nice to him in the first place. Haimeia doesn't interrupt. She just listens with an unreadable expression, but he decides to push past the doubt. He tells her that regardless of the reason, he'd be really happy if they could keep getting along from here on out. That earns him a brilliant smile. Haimeia doesn't hesitate for a second, reassuring him that obviously they're going to keep hanging out. Her immediate cheerful acceptance hits Kurose like a critical hit, his left blushing, completely captivated by how easy she makes this look. Suddenly his brain flashes back to the dating tips list his sister sent him. He remembers the specific bullet point about complimenting your date if you think she's cute, and realizes has completely failed to do that today. They reach the train platform and Haimeia announces that her ride is approaching. Panic sets in for Kurose. This is his last window of opportunity. He summons every ounce of courage he has, squeezes his eyes shut, and yells out her name. He starts to stammer out that today she was very CU, but he completely fumbles the landing. He thrusts the plushie forward and finishes the sentence by saying, "Hez glad they got this cute thing." Haimeia looks a little confused by the pivot, but she agrees anyway. Internally, Kurose is having a total meltdown. He screams at himself for being a coward and a loser, convinced that a timid guy like him never stood a chance at telling Haimeia how he really feels. He continues the self-flagellation, angry that he got his hopes up only to choke at the finish line. As Haimeia says her goodbyes, he resigns himself to the fact that he hasn't really changed at all. As she heads for the ticket gates, Haimeia turns back with a final wave and a casual "see you later." Kurose manages to reply with a quiet "see you tomorrow." Kurose stands there for a moment, watching her figure disappear into the station crowd. He reflects on his high school life so far, how he's been totally alone since enrollment. He had accepted that the next 3 years would be gray and mundane, but looking at where he is now, things feel different. He catches Haimeia waving one last time from the other side of the gates. It hits him that he is changing little by little, For the first time, he has someone who actually says, "See you tomorrow" to him. Filled with new resolve, he breaks into a smile and waves back enthusiastically. Since he actually has a tomorrow to look forward to now, he decides he's going to do his best to keep changing. He shouts out a final "see you tomorrow." On the train ride home, Haimiya's phone buzzes. It's a text from Kurose thanking her for the day and telling her to get home safely. She stares at the screen, looking genuinely surprised by the thoughtful follow-up. When she gets to her front door, we see the little mouse plushie Kurose 1 is already clipped to her keychain. She's got a faint, happy blush on her face as she unlocks the door. Once inside, she heads straight for her room, tosses her bag aside, and immediately flops face down onto her bed. The day definitely wore her out. She rolls over, holding up the mouse plushie. She just lies there, staring at it quietly. A small, private smile spreads across her face as she hugs the plushie close. It looks like the day left a pretty good impression on her, too. Meanwhile, Kurose gets back to his own house and walks right into a trap. He's immediately ambushed by his sisters Sora and Umi, who demand a full report on the date. Kurose tries to play it off, claiming nothing happened and has just tired. Umi, his younger sister, isn't buying that for a second and tells him to stop lying. Sora sees right through him too. She points out that his happy expression gives everything away. It's obvious the date went well. The next day at school, Kurose is walking through the hallway, running through a mental checklist of misery. He's got health committee duties after school, plus biology and English homework. He sighs, resigning himself to the fact that he'll probably be cleaning the committee room alone again. Then he wonders if Haimeia will be in the infirmary, and a small grin creeps onto his face. Suddenly a voice says, "Hey," and someone pokes him in the neck from behind. The surprise attack makes Kurose nearly jump out of his skin. He spins around and stammers out her name, completely caught off guard. Haimeia just greets him casually and asks if Hess on his way to the committee meeting. When he says yes, she decides to tag along since she's heading to the nurse's office anyway. She asks what he was thinking about to make him so jumpy, which he frantically denies. They get to the infirmary and Haimeia cheerfully greets Aya-sensei, mostly to ask for snacks. The teacher greets them back but looks surprised, asking Kurose if Haimeia actually came with him. Aya-sensei looks between the two of them with a curious expression. She doesn't beat around the bush and asks when exactly they became so close. Haimeia plays it cool, telling Aya-sensei that they've actually been chatting for a while now. Then she throws Kurose under the bus, turning to him and asking for confirmation. Put on the spot, Kurose panics and immediately agrees, yelling that they talk all the time. He tries to elaborate, explaining to Aya-sensei that he happened to have extra movie tickets, so Haimeia went with him yesterday. When the teacher asks what they saw, Kurose starts to say they watched a horror movie, and that Haimeia cuts him off, instantly barking his name with a terrifying aura. Realizing he almost exposed her fear of horror movies, Kurose pivots hard, insisting that she totally enjoyed it. Aya-sensei just smiles, saying she's glad they had fun. Then Aya-sensei notices the plushie hanging on Kurose's bag. She recognizes it as a Spanish, short for space animal. Kurose gets a bit awkward and admits he put it there because he thought it was cute, even though it's not really his usual style. Haimeia leans in with a sly look. She starts teasing him, asking if this means he has the same plushie as her, and wonders if he was really that happy about matching with her. Kurose immediately denies it, his face turning bright red. Haimeia's playful vibe vanishes instantly, and she actually looks a little hurt by his reaction. She gets right in his face, demanding to know what he meant by that. She asks him point blank if he hates the idea of having matching items with her. We get a quick flashback to Kurose in his room the night before holding the plushie. He knows space animals are Haimeia's favorite, but he was worried she'd think it was creepy if she saw him wearing it. Back in the infirmary, Kurose clears the air. He admits that he is happy they match, but he just got embarrassed because she pointed it out. The honest confession actually makes Haimeia blush. Trying to recover, Haimeia looks away and says that if it makes him happy to match, then she supposes she'll allow him to keep it on his bag. Kurose is confused by her roundabout logic, but she insists he keep it there. Then she leans in with a confident smirk, declaring that just for his sake, she'll start wearing her matching plushie on her bag tomorrow too. Kurose is left speechless, realizing she twisted the whole thing to make it look like he begged her to match. While Kurose tries to process the fact that Haimeia actually wants to match with him, Aya-sensei watches the whole exchange. She thinks to herself that while they're a weird pair, they are undeniably cute together. Sometime later, Kurose finishes up his health committee work. He thanks Aya-sensei and tells her he's heading home for the day. As he turns to leave, he realizes Haimeia never left. She's been waiting on one of the beds and gives him a small wave, casually saying she'll see him tomorrow. That simple goodbye is too much for him. Kurose gives a deep, flustered bow and practically runs out of the room, covering his blushing face the second the door closes behind him. With Kurose gone, the vibe in the infirmary settles down. Aya-sensei thanks Haimeia, calling her Mio-chan for helping with the cleanup earlier. Haimeia grabs her bag, mentioning that she should probably get going too. Aya-sensei leans against her desk, teasingly noting that Haimeia seems to be enjoying school a lot more lately. Haimeia immediately bristles at the suggestion, snapping back that the nurse is way off base. Deciding to bail before the conversation gets any more embarrassing, Haimeia announces her departure. But as she turns to leave, Aya-sensei spots something attached to her bag, the matching Spanny plushie. Haimeia marches down the empty hallway, unaware that back in the infirmary, Aya-sensei is smiling to herself, thinking about how cute it is when students can't just be honest with their feeling. The next morning starts early. At 6:20 a.m., an alarm blares, and a hand sporting black nail polish reaches out to slap the snooze button. Haimeia sits up in bed looking groggy as she rubs the sleep out of her eyes. She drags herself out of bed and shuffles across the room, grumbling under her breath about the early hour. The routine continues in the kitchen, where she sits down with a slice of toast and pours herself a cup of black coffee to wake up. Then comes the prep work. She spends time carefully curling her hair and applying her makeup, transforming into her usual polished self. Fully dressed in her uniform and looking sharp, she slips on her loafers in the entryway and calls out that she's heading out. Her commute is the standard grind, standing in a packed train car surrounded by the morning rush before tapping her pass at the station gate. While she's riding the train, a woman with glasses standing nearby suddenly flinches. Her nose has started bleeding. The woman starts panicking, patting her pockets, and realizing she doesn't have any tissues. Haimeia notices the commotion. Without hesitating, she reaches out and taps the distressed woman on the shoulder. She holds out a clean handkerchief, offering it to the stranger. The woman tries to wave it off, clearly feeling bad about ruining a stranger's handkerchief, but Haimeia presses it into her hand. She tells the woman to take care of herself, showing a glimpse of that hidden kindness she usually reserves for the infirmary. The woman is left standing there, clutching the handkerchief to her nose and looking completely flustered. As she watches Haimeia walk away, she has a sudden realization that she might have just developed a massive crush on this mysterious high school girl. Later during the morning commute, Haimeia spots a familiar back ahead of her. It's Kurose, and sure enough, Hez got the matching Spanny plushie hanging from his school bag. Before she makes her move, she whips out her phone for a quick mirror check. She fixes her bangs, ensures every hair is in place, and switches on her friendly mode. She trots up to greet him, startling the poor guy into a stammered, "Good morning." Haimeia immediately pokes fun at how red his face is, though Kurose frantically insists it's just the surprise, not the company. The vibe shifts once they get to class. As the lesson starts, Kurose freezes. He digs through his bag in a panic, only to realize the one thing he needs, his math textbook, is missing. To make matters worse, the math teacher, a bald man who doubles as the PE instructor, decides to pick a victim based on today's date. He calls on student number 12. Naturally, that's Kurose. Kurose turns pale, cursing the teacher's arbitrary logic. The student sitting next to him notices the sheer terror radiating off Kurose and whispers to ask what's wrong. Before Kurose can confess, his neighbor shoots up out of his chair. He tells the teacher he was the one borrowing Kurose's textbook. The teacher sighs, recognizing the student as Tanzaki, and scolds him for causing trouble yet again. Kurose watches in awe as he mentally introduces us to his savior Tanzaki Tuya, as a basketball player, the class mood maker, and a guy who gets along with literally everyone. A certified, sparkling nice guy. It's a painful contrast. Kurose looks at Tanzaki, then looks at himself, a messy-haired member of the Go Home Club, and realizes they are living in two different worlds. Once the heat is off, Kurose leans over and quietly asks Tanzaki why he took the fall and lied about borrowing the book. Tanzaki turns around with a blindingly bright grin. He explains that he did it because Kurose looked like the type of guy who would have a nervous breakdown if he had to speak in front of the class without a book. Kurose's soul leaves his body. It wasn't an insult, it was genuine concern, which somehow makes the socially awkward label hurt 10 times more. As the teacher yells at Tanzaki to sit down and shut up, Kurose nurses his emotional wounds. Meanwhile, outside the classroom window, Haimeia is spotted strolling by skipping class to head to the cafeteria because she's hungry. When lunch rolls around, Kurose is quietly eating at his desk. Next to him, the perfect Tanzaki is dramatically clutching his head. He forgot his wallet and is now facing a foodless afternoon. Since Tanzaki saved his hide earlier, Kurose decides to throw him a lifeline. He offers up one of his bread rolls, awkwardly clarifying that it's not a thank you gift, he just happens to have an extra one. Tanzaki looks at the bread like it's gold and asks if he's sure. Tanzaki accepts the offering with zero hesitation, practically worshipping Kurose as a god. He casually drops the friend label, which catches Kurose off guard, before pulling up a chair to turn this into a lunch date. Between bites, Tanzaki asks if Kurose has any close friends in class. Kurose's mind flashes to Haimeia for a split second, but he admits he's pretty much flying solo. Tanzaki doesn't miss a beat. He decides right then and there that they're buddies now. He even puts them on a first-name basis, telling Kurose to call him Tuya. Kurose agrees, realizing that despite being a bit intense, this guy is genuinely just a good person. But the wholesome vibes don't last long. Tuya casually asks if Kurose knows a second year named Haimeia. The name drop is so unexpected that Kurose nearly chokes on his drink. Wiping his mouth, Kurose frantically asks why he's asking. Tuya leans in, explaining that something absolutely wild happened involving her just yesterday. Tuya sets the scene. He was playing basketball with the upperclassmen during lunch. One of the seniors launched a rogue ball that accidentally smacked Haimeia right in the head as she was walking by. The guy offered a quick half-hearted apology. Big mistake. Tuya describes how Haimeia snapped. She turned on them with a look that could kill, tearing into them for being dangerous idiots who need to watch where they're going. Tuya actually laughs while telling the story, noting that his team captain, usually a tough guy, was so terrified he went into a depression spiral. The rest of the team was just as traumatized. He wraps up the story by saying Hess heard the rumors, but now has convinced Haimeia is legitimately dangerous. And just as those words leave his mouth, Tuya's eyes lock onto something standing in the doorway directly behind Kurose. It's Haimeia. She leans into the classroom and calls Kurose's name. Kurose jumps, but Tuya looks like Hez seeing a ghost. She explains that Aya-sensei needs some help in the infirmary, and specifically asks for Kurose. Kurose, sensing an escape from the awkwardness, immediately agrees. Haimeia flashes a sweet smile and suggests they walk there together. Kurose turns a shade of red and enthusiastically nods. As she leads him away, Kurose tosses a quick goodbye to his new friend. Tuya is left sitting there in stunned silence, trying to process how the dangerous girl is suddenly acting like that. But as they exit the room, Haimeia glances back over her shoulder. She shoots a menacing, cold-blooded glare directly at the frozen Tuya, letting him know she definitely heard every word. Back in the classroom, Tuya is left alone, practically melting into a puddle of sweat. The math in his head finally adds up to one horrifying conclusion. Haimiya-Senpai is absolutely 100% dangerous. As Kurose's self-proclaimed best friend, Tuya's gut instinct kicks in. He gets that sinking feeling that a tragedy is unfolding right now, and his buddy is the victim. His brain immediately supplies a worst-case scenario, a mental image of Haimeia dragging a helpless Kurose away against his will. A helpful little caption clarifies that this is in fact just Tuya's wild delusion, but it's based on facts. He flashes back to the basketball incident, remembering how his tough-as-nails team captain was reduced to a trembling mess by her. If the captain couldn't handle her, a fragile guy like Kurose is doomed. The delusion escalates. Now Hess picturing Haimeia using Kurose as a literal footstool and ordering him to run to the cafeteria for bread. Tuya clenches a fist. He can't let that happen. He has to be the hero here. He scarfs down the last of the bread Kurose gave him earlier, fuel for the mission, and launches himself out of his seat. He sprints out of the classroom, swearing on his life to save his soul brother. Meanwhile, in the real world, things are aggressively normal. Kurose and Haimeia are just helping Aya-sensei carry boxes to the infirmary. Kurose is being a gentleman about it, while Haimeia is pouting about her box being too heavy. Once there, inside the infirmary, Aya-sensei rewards the labor with a break and a stash of secret snacks. The vibe is super chill, as Kurose and Haimeia munch on the treats, totally in sync about how good they are. That peace is shattered when the door slides open with a violent bang. Tuya stands there panting from his cross-school sprint, and screams Kurose's name, demanding to know if Hess still in one piece. Kurose just blinks in confusion while Haimeia tilts her head and asks who the intruder is. Tuya completely ignores the scary lady, focusing laser, like on Kurose, and telling him to get over there right now. He physically drags Kurose into a corner and starts whispering like a conspiracy theorist. He asks if Kurose has any idea he's hanging out with the Haimiya-Senpai, and seriously asks if he's being blackmailed. Kurose tries to explain that it's actually fine, but Tuya isn't hearing it, has already promised to save him. Before he can elaborate, a voice cuts through the whispering from the background. Haimeia is sitting on the infirmary bed and the sweet act is gone. She's glaring daggers at them, asking what the secret meeting is about, and noting that their whispering is seriously annoying her. Tuya is shaking in his boots, but his bro code overrides the fear. Haimeia stands up and walks over, confirming that yep, this is definitely the guy she overheard talking trash about her earlier. Toya steps between her and Kurose, putting himself in the line of fire. He tells her he doesn't care about her reputation, and demands to know exactly what she wants with his friend. Haimeia doesn't even dignify his heroic stand with a response. She just reaches out, clamps her hand over his nose to pinch it shut, and loudly shouts his full name to snap him out of it. While still suffocating Tadaya with one hand, she turns to Kurose with a bright, pleasant smile. She cheerfully announces that she absolutely hates this guy, leaving Kurose to realize just how ruthless she can actually be. The second he's released, Turia scrambles back and grabs Kurose, convinced that the nose pinch was an act of violence. He starts yelling that she's a monster, while Kurose is desperately trying to de-escalate the situation. Kurose finally manages to get a word in edgewise. He explains that he wasn't being bullied, the other committee members skipped out on work, so he was just stuck doing it by himself until Haimeia helped. The gears turn in Tuya's head, and he realizes Haimeia was actually being nice to a shy underclassman. He sheepishly apologizes for the mix-up, though Haimeia is muttering in the background that Hez already on her blacklist. Now that the danger is gone, Tuya immediately makes himself at home and asks Aya-sensei if he can hang out too. The teacher points out that this isn't a social club, but Tuya ignores her, much to Haimia's visible irritation. Aya-sensei spots an opportunity for free labor. She tells Tuya he can stay if he hauls some heavy boxes to the supply room. He agrees instantly, and both Kurose and Haimeia have the exact same thought. This guy is way too easy to manipulate. As soon as the loudmouth is out of the room, Haimeia collapses onto the bed next to Kurose. She sighs that just being near Tuya drains her energy and asks Kurose why he's suddenly involved with someone so high octane. Kurose admits that today was actually the first time they've ever spoken, calling Tuya an interesting guy. Haimeia isn't impressed, noting that forcefully befriending someone you just met is less interesting and more creepy. Kurose pushes back, insisting that Toya is genuinely a good person at heart. He drops the bomb that Toya is actually the first real friend Hei's managed to make in his class, which catches Haimeia off guard. She repeats the word friend slowly, as if she's tasting it. She stares at Kurose with an unreadable expression, making him nervous that he said something wrong. She connects the dots out loud. If Kurose has a friend in his own class, he won't need to hang out with her anymore. She pouts and says it's a tragedy, sending Kurose into an immediate panic. He frantically waves his hands, desperate to correct the record. He blurts out that that's not true at all, because Haimiya-Senpai is also an incredibly precious friend to him. His face turns bright red, but he commits to the statement. He looks her in the eye and tells her that he wants to cherish the time he spends with her just as much. That seems to be the right answer. Haimia's pout vanishes, replaced by a soft, genuine smile as she looks back at him, clearly pleased that she hasn't lost her spot in his life. She reaches out and gives him a gentle head pat, praising him for saying that so clearly. Kurose freezes up completely short, circuited by the sudden physical contact and the compliment. His brain essentially melts. Between his own bold confession and her incredibly sweet reaction, his processing power hits zero, and he spirals into a panic. He grabs his head, muttering to himself about how embarrassing this is, both the cheesy line he just delivered and the fact that Hez getting treated like a good puppy in return. The tender moment is violently interrupted by Tuya, who marches back in holding a dead cockroach by the antenna. He cheerfully announces he found a massive one in the supply room, completely missing the fact that Haimeia has a severe phobia of bugs. Tuya carelessly tosses the bug toward them, and Haimeia's survival instincts override her personality. She launches a high-speed kick that blasts the insect carcass across the room, while Kurose screams his friend's name in horror. Once the biological hazard is dealt with, the mood is thoroughly killed. Haimeia decides she's done for the day and heads home. The next day, Haimeia walks into the infirmary, expecting peace and quiet, but finds Tuya lounging on the bed like he owns the place. Her expression instantly drops to pure annoyance as she asks what the hell he's doing there. Kurose shows up a moment later with a cheerful greeting, only to stop short when he sees Tuya. Haimeia immediately turns to Kurose, demanding to know why that idiot has set up camp in their sanctuary. Tuya explains that Aya-sensei gave him a pass to hang out here as a reward for moving those boxes yesterday. Haimeia isn't buying it and bluntly tells the intruder to get out. Kurose steps in to mediate, reminding her that Toya did actually help with the cleaning duties. Haimeia clicks her tongue but seems to accept the logic, deciding to tolerate his existence for now. Toya immediately starts messing with the medical equipment. He stands against the height chart to flex his stats, announcing that has a solid 181 centimeters, before dragging Kurose over to measure up. Kurose clocks in at 168 centimeters, perfectly average. Feeling bold, he turns the attention to the senior, suggesting that Haimeia should get measured next. The result is 157 centimeters. Haimeia stares at the number and immediately rejects reality, insisting she's definitely taller than that, and accusing Kurose of messing up the measurement. Toya laughs, commenting that she's surprisingly small for someone so terrifying. Haimeia responds with a quiet, dead-eyed threat to end his life if he keeps talking. Moving down the assembly line, they hop on the scale. Toya is 72 kilograms and Kurose is 60 kilograms. Then, with zero survival instinct, Tukila grins and tells Haimeia it's her turn to weigh in. Haimeia lets out a shriek that could shatter glass. There is absolutely no way she is stepping on that scale. Tuya flinches as Haimeia threatens to end his bloodline for being a tactless jerk. Kurose tries to point out that Tuya brought this on himself, but Tuya ignores logic and yells that He's gonna punch a hole in her face. Haimeia gets right in Tuya's personal space, flashing her nails and claiming she grew them out specifically to maul him. Sensing that a murder is imminent, Kurose suddenly remembers he has urgent business in the staff room. He apologizes, promises to return in 30 minutes, and sprints for the exit, leaving the irritated senior and the annoyed giant alone in the infirmary. Sometime later, Haimeia is sitting alone by the school's carp pond, tossing food into the water. Toya finds her and calls out, making her jump. She recovers quickly, looking around and asking what that annoying noise was. He explains that he finished wiping the floor back in the infirmary. Haimeia ignores him completely, turning her attention back to the water. Toya sits on the steps beside her and asks if she likes carp. She replies that she likes the fish about 100 times more than she likes him. Toya seems unfazed, asking if she really hates him that much. Haimeia remarks that Hay's got some nerve asking that question directly. She clarifies that she doesn't waste energy actively hating people. Then she pivots to the real issue, demanding to know why he's hanging around Kurose. Toya mentions that even Kurose thought it was weird how fast they became friends after just meeting yesterday. Haimeia narrows her eyes, asking if Toya is plotting something. He looks away, claiming there's no real reason for it. He's just a friendly guy. Then he corrects himself. There actually was a specific moment that made him want to befriend Kurose. Haimeia looks confused. Toya launches into a flashback. He recalls seeing Kurose diligently cleaning the classroom, picking up the slack for other students who had bailed on their duties the second no one was looking. The flashback continues to the day their class was choosing health committee members. When no one volunteered, the teacher announced that nobody was leaving until the position was filled, creating a hostage situation that Toya clearly remembers. Back in the flashback, the silence in the classroom was deafening until Kurose nervously raised his hand. He volunteered for the health committee, effectively taking one for the team, just so everyone else could go home. Toya explains that after that, he started noticing Kurose everywhere. He was always sitting by himself, to the point where even Toya's other friends pointed out that the guy was a total loner. But watching him, Toya never got the vibe that Kurose actually hated people. It looked more like he just didn't know how to deal with. Back in the present, Toya turns to Haimeia and admits that He's not exactly a genius. People call him an idiot all the time, and He's admittedly terrible at reading the room. But even with his limited brain power, there was one thing he knew for sure. Kurose is a ridiculously kind guy. Haimeia actually looks surprised by his earnestness. It triggers a memory for her, flashing back to the mall when Kurose shouted down those guys who were harassing her. Toya lays out his very simple game plan. If he became friends with Kurose, the guy wouldn't be alone anymore. And if he wasn't alone, maybe they'd get to see him actually enjoying himself. He flashes a bright grin, saying it's only natural since they're classmates. Haimeia looks down quietly, processing the fact that this loud idiot actually has a point. But the wholesome moment expires immediately. Haimeia abruptly smacks him across the face, eliciting a pained yelp from the giant. Despite the physical assault, Haimeia is smiling. She admits that surprisingly, he actually has a decent side to him. Toya lights up at the compliment, but Haimeia immediately shuts him down, saying his last remark was annoying enough to cancel out any goodwill. Toya points out that the difference in how she treats him versus Kurose is wildly unfair. He tries to imitate her sweet mode with a cutesy pose, asking if this is the kind of act she puts on for Kurose. Haimeia just stares at him, dead-eyed and unamused. A bit later, Kurose returns to the infirmary only to find it empty. As he wonders where the Chaos Duo went, Aya-sensei suggests checking the back garden. Kurose heads outside and walks into a hostage situation. Haimeia is holding Tuya over the carp pond by his tie while he screams for his life, leaving Kurose to wonder how things escalated to attempted murder this quickly.